Oh, good to see you. Just up the road, about 10-minute drive, there's Mandroy Falls. It's incredible. Let's get some fruit and check it out. All right, rock and roll. This hill will head into the rainforest, Wooranoora National Park. Yeah, mate, it's amazing. All right, team, let's do it. Ready, mate? How's that for a root? Like, feel that, how strong that is. Oh, good to see you. Just up the road, about 10-minute drive, there's Mandroy Falls. It's incredible. Let's get some fruit and check it out. All right, rock and roll. This hill will head into the rainforest, Wooranoora National Park. Yeah, mate, it's amazing. All right, team, let's do it. Ready, mate?
Fellow councillors, staff and residents viewing via live stream, good morning all and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we stand, the Gulnay people. I wish to acknowledge my respect for their current and emerging elders and those in dreaming. I thank them for the contributions they have made in building this community. I'll now call on Pastor Mark Dewar to deliver the opening prayer.
May I extend greetings from the Cassowary Coast Uniting Church to you all from Tully, Innisfail and Mission Beach, and extend the peace of the Lord who you also from the ministers, pastors, leaders and chaplains in our school across the region we serve. There's a passage of scripture, Romans 12:3, that says, "For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourselves with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you." And in this passage, it encourages us to use our gifts. If we have gifts, we've been given different gifts according to God's glory. And if your gift is serving, then serve. It is teaching, then teach. If it is encouraging, then encouraging. If it is contributing to the needs of others, then give generously. If it is leadership, then govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, then do so cheerfully. Love must be sincere. Be devoted to one another. Honour one another above yourselves. No doubt this verse is directed towards the church, but I believe it speaks to our roles as both elected and appointed leaders and for the right leadership of our region. So let us pray. Dear wise and loving God, I thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. The resilience and courage that is required for each one of us is a blessing from you. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honour of bearing the responsibilities that come with being elected to this important role. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us and for your boundless and gracious nature. Lord, in the scriptures you have said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities since you have established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I ask for your blessing on our mayor, your blessing on all the councillors and for the officials, and in particular for this assembled council here today. God, I ask that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and to do good, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task, favour for their families and important relationships. Bless the agenda before those who serve our community. May this be a fruitful session, and may the decisions taken enhance the common good of the people they serve. May these who have been elected and gifted to serve be quick to listen and confident in their decision making. And may interruptions and unscheduled engagements become opportunities and assignments that lead to fruitful outcomes. Give all who serve the grace to stop for the one, to get low and go slow, and walking and working in humility and compassion. In the precious name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, mate. Councillors, we have a number of apologies today. David Goodman, Simon Page, Leona Coppin and Justin Fisher. Are there any further apologies? Take that as a no. I'm going to ask all of us to stand in a moment to acknowledge a minute's silence for 3 former council employees who passed away in the last week. Firstly, Ian O'Driscoll, a plumber with the council for more than 40 years. His funeral service this afternoon. Albert Lanza-Farmy, who was a store manager for over 40 years with council. And former councillor Ian Rule, who served 44 years as a roads engineer and 2 terms on council. He was there for the inaugural election after the forced amalgamation of the Johnson and Carball Shires, and Ian's funeral service is next Wednesday. So would you please stand and acknowledge 1 minute silence? Thank you. Thank you. I'll move on to the declaration of conflict of interest. Declaration of prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest. Please use this opportunity to make public any prescribed conflict of interest or declarable conflict of interest in respect of the items in the agenda. Councillors should use this opportunity to disclose and or comment on other councillors and or staff interests in accordance with the Act and the regulations. Councillors, are there any conflicts to declare? Councillor Baines, I omitted to acknowledge that you're not well and you're dialing in today to the meeting. Welcome. Any conflict to declare?
No conflicts from me, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your...
Thanks, Councillor Baines. Okay, if there are no conflicts, we now move on to our public question time, which is time allocated of 15 minutes, and the presenter today is Mrs. Carolyn Mewing. Would you like to come forward, Carolyn? Put your proposal, please. Welcome.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark. Hi everyone.
Morning.
I live on Girramay land within Girragun Indigenous Protected Area, and I'd again today like to thank CCRC for introducing this public question time. As a preamble to my first question, the ongoing area of white-collar crime and corruption was one of the battlegrounds fought on in the recent federal election. An ICAC that stops pork barrelling and the growth of white elephants in local government areas has been pledged by the incoming Albanese Labor government. With this fact in mind, there may be a perception within the CCRC area that this council and previous administrations were and are being bulldozed into taking on expensive, risky infrastructure projects such as boat ramps, jetties, stadiums, car parks, swimming pools, rock walls and bike tracks that aren't built by relying on evidence or taking into account future consequences, but relying on politically advantageous outcomes for state and federal politicians and secret lobbying by individuals who push local wants over local needs. So, my first question is in two parts. Does this council have mechanisms in place to prevent election promises made by state and federal politicians from becoming local government area white elephants that incur large operating, maintenance and depreciation costs for ratepayers? Does this council have mechanisms to avoid being bulldozed into supporting unsustainable and in some cases legally risky projects that local, state and federal entities won't take no for an answer on? That's my first question.
Thank you, Ms. Meary. Would you like the CEO to respond to that one first?
Yep, that's fine.
Look, thanks so much for the question. The system of local government must be accountable, efficient and effective and sustainable and consistent with the local government principles contained within the Act. So the local government principles are transparent and effective processes and decision making in public interest, sustainable development and management of assets and infrastructure and delivery of effective services, democratic representation, social inclusion and meaningful community engagement, good governance of and by local government, and ethical and legal behaviour of councillors, local government employees and council advisors. So these principles guide councils in their decision-making process. Council are required to develop a 5-year corporate plan and also an annual operational plan. Section 169 of the Local Government Regulations details that council's budgets must be consistent with these strategic documents. The Local Government Regulations also detail that a local government may, by resolution, amend the budget for a financial year. So as such, any major projects must align with council's strategic documents and be included in council's budget by an absolute majority. Further to this, the grant funding provided by the Queensland Government or the Australian Government require the parties to enter into a funding agreement. The execution of a funding agreement provides the opportunity for council to approve or decline the grant funding allocated by the state or federal government.
The word sustainable, that comes up a lot. But the one area that I see that isn't being sustained is our environment. And that's where I see a lack of flow of funds and grants over and over again. In the one of the reasons I decided to present 2 questions was after I read the Queensland State Government budget and saw that their allocation for the environment was going down from 2.7% in the past budget to 2.5%. And sometimes I wonder whether that's because from the bottom up, we're not requesting more funding for that area, the environment, but constantly requesting more funding for the built environment and other areas of government concern. So just as a reply to what you said. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Carol.
So my second question is, as a preamble to my second question, this question has a connection to the first question in that it involves the spending of taxpayers' funds for this area, in this case state government funds. However, unlike the above arguably wasteful and possibly corrupt expenditures, this expenditure, I suggest, has much more lasting benefit to the entire rate base of this shire. The recent Queensland state budget reminded councils of a $1.1 billion Recycling and Jobs Fund. The state is committed to investing in and partnering with progressive councils to build new infrastructure that will see 3 times more jobs than business as usual with landfill supportive industries. So my second question is, rather than persist with its antiquated landfill and transfer station centric waste management system, will this council be approaching the state government to access the state's $1.1 billion Recycling and Jobs Fund for assistance to build new infrastructure, create new council jobs, and drag the CCRC's waste management system into the 21st century?
Over to the CEO.
Through the chair, I understand the portfolio holder has a response.
Councillor
Good
Millwood.
morning. Thank you, Caroline, for the question. As part of the $1.1 billion Recycling and Jobs Fund, the state has provided advice on how the spending will occur. $77.8 million for regional waste management plans, $147.2 million for industry development and infrastructure, $16.5 million for statewide behaviour change programs, which in other words is education, $29.3 million for circular economy initiatives, $21 million to bolster regulatory assessment and compliance. So they've actually stated what we have to spend our allocation on. The Cassowary Coast Regional Council is working with the Far North Queensland Regional Organisation of Councils, which we know as the FNQ ROC, who have appointed a contractor to work with the 11 councils in the ROC to develop a regional resource recovery plan. Funding for this has largely been from the Department of the Environment and Science. The strategic intent of the plan is to understand what the sequence of levellers will allow 11 FNQ regional councils to improve the economics of resource recovery operations, encourage economic development, and meet or move towards state targets relating to household waste generation, recycling, and landfill by 2050 to improve the environmental and social outcomes. The work of the consultants is expected to be completed by the end of 2022. That's telling us in December at the present time. The regional plan will trigger access to the Recycling and Jobs Fund. The information and funding opportunities will inform the Cassowary Coast Regional Council in the development of our own regional waste management plan. So in the short, we've got to wait for the Far North Queensland strategy to be finished and adopted before we actually work on the way forward for our own. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa. Look, I'm 63. 30 years ago, when I was a young mum, I think it was the Tipburn Cardwell Shire Council asked me as a young mum to take my recyclables, my milk bottles, my glass and my tins to a location at my small school in the Kennedy Valley for recycling. 30 years later, I'm sitting here as a grandmother still talking about recycling. You know, it is the 21st century. I don't think we've got the sort of times that we're talking about to take action on these matters, to really start moving. But thanks, Teresa. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you for your input.
Thank you,
and
Carol.
I appreciate your frustration in
Yes.
in how long this takes, but I really do hope that my light that shines on this project can move some of these chains forward, because I totally feel the frustration myself. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 1, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting on the 26th of May 2022. Somebody move their true and accurate record, please. Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Baines?
Aye.
We now move on to item 2, business arising from the minutes. Was there any business arising, councillors? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you. Good morning. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask Mr. Sadler to come forward, please. Just 2 points from the last meeting. We spoke last month, Mr. Sadler, about the Mission Beach transfer station, and the completion date you gave us then was the end of June. Today is the 30th of June. So obviously we've had weather impacting, but I'm just wondering where we're sitting with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Yes, you're 100% right. We have had weather over the last few weeks, which has delayed. I haven't got a final date because of obviously the weather's still impacting, and we're working with the contractor on that. So we would hope that would be only in a few weeks' time, but obviously depending on the weather moving forward. The forecast, just talking to some of the civil guys this morning, and the forecast is wet weather for the next few weeks. So yeah.
Thank you. And my second question relates to the feral pig plan that we've got organised through council and rural people, farmers, etc. We have had a lot of pigs within our suburban areas. I've had people from Bingle Bay, Wongaling Beach and Tully Heads talk about feral pigs in their yards and the damage they are creating. How will the pig plan that we've adopted help alleviate the problems for those in our more sort of suburban, urban areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for the question. The approach in relation to our executive oversight group for the feral pig management is really looking at a shift and a change in relation to how we do that from a catchment point of view. So that would not only be agribusinesses but also the urban footprint, and we are looking at cluster baiting in relation to those catchments. So actually targeting key areas where there has been significant sightings or I suppose impacts from feral pigs. We do have some new staff on board as well, and so we are working with industry as well to come up with some new ideas, and we have been trialling some of that cluster baiting over the last few weeks with one of those agri businesses at the moment. So getting some really good buy-in and some, I suppose, things that we haven't had so well in the past, where in the catchment itself we're actually getting neighbours working together to get those cluster baitings and impacts and reductions occurring, because not only in the urban environment but also for our agri-businesses. I've been out with a number of cane growers recently and seeing the impacts that feral animals are having, or feral pigs are having on their cropping, and the reductions that are occurring. But also, most recently with last week with the announcement from another detection in relation to the TR4 disease in the Tully Valley. So obviously working and partnering with industry, but yes, the urban footprint is part of that catchment based as well.
Okay, thank you. And as mentioned, I'd just like to congratulate the new members of staff that we've got on. Kelly's doing a great job. She's reaching out to these individuals, which is not just, it's great that she's having a chat, not just sending a letter. I think that means a lot to the local community to have a voice that they can talk to. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Barnes and then Councillor Millwood.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Sadler. Further on from what Councillor Chewy has said, feral pigs are not only affecting cassowaries, they're not only digging up agricultural land. With reports of a pig knocking someone off a bike recently at Tully Heads. Is there a phone number that the locals could ring, a more direct line, or the energetic locals, another avenue that they could get more involved, because they seem to go so far in our system and then hit a brick wall?
So through the chair, thank you, Deputy Mayor, for your question. First of all, the direct line is our customer service number, so that'll always get to the officer that's the best suited for whatever situation that is. So that would be the advice back to all our customers in relation to that, and that gets someone from our customer service centre, or even after hours with our after hours call centre. In relation to the urban piece, as our new staff develop the programs further with that catchment-based approach, we will engage further with the members of the community in the urban footprint, particularly when we're going to do some cluster baiting in those areas and work with them on that.
Councillor Millwood.
Thank you, through the chair. Does cluster baiting affect any other species?
So through the chair, thank you, Councillor Millwood. So our approach and the way that we do that baiting is in a way that is minimising any impact from any other species. So we do have methods that we work with Department of Agriculture and Fisheries on in relation to any other off-target species, and make sure that our processes are in those lines. So obviously with that that approach, there's controls around how to do things as well from a legislative perspective as well. So we have to work with farmers and other members of our community and how we do that.
Any further?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yep, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is a very important subject. The Feral Pig Executive Oversight Committee group is about to have its second meeting next month. All the planning at the moment is around let's work together and let's try and get these opportunities for cluster baitings, and for us to work in a more proactive rather than a reactive manner. Look, we have great input from the agribusiness sector. I would also suggest that with community contacting council, talking to council and wanting to become involved and maybe assist some of our staff in the work. We are terribly under-resourced, and feral pigs are a growing problem, seems to be. So having members of the community that may be happy to assist our staff in monitoring. If you see a pig, please let us know. We can get this data into the system. If you can capture where they are, and if we can all work together, Mr. Mayor, I believe that we'll be able to get this great model that's been established over the last 3 years, build it into this proactive sense, and we can all work together around the scourge, which is feral pigs. There's some great interest out of environment departments at state and federal level around the damage that pigs do, not just economically, but to our environment as well. So I would encourage everybody to please be involved. If you see one, get it into the system, get a customer request into the system. That data goes live to our staff, and we can start planning some of these cluster baiting events or some of these other mitigation methods that we will use. We can start planning them in a proactive sense. Our community are our eyes and ears, and we would really appreciate as much data as we can get. And if anyone wants to assist our staff in any manner, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Baines. Any further business arising? Okay, we'll move on.
Sorry, no, Mr. Mayor, one more from me.
Yep.
Sorry, I put myself on mute again. Mr. Mayor, item 4.4 at the last meeting was our local laws and subordinate local laws. They are still up for public submissions. So I might ask the CEO just to give the general public a reminder of the submissions and when they close, in case someone wants to put a submission forward.
Thanks, Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, the local laws have been up for public submission since the 26th of May, and they'll remain open until the 1st of July at 4 p.m, so close of business tomorrow. Copies of them can be made available either at Council's customer service centres or available on the website. So for those that are interested, we would encourage you to get those submissions in, and they will be brought to Council for future consideration around adoption.
Satisfied with that response, Councillor Baines?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a general reminder to everyone out there who wants to have their say.
Thanks, mate. Councillor Barnes.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. 7.7 in the minutes, it's going cashless. This is, if it's not a contentious issue already, I have feeling, and I hope I'm wrong, that it may become a contentious issue. This is something that was not implemented by councillors, it was a operational decision, and I hope it's very beneficial to council. I would have rather that it came to council and councillors had a little bit of input, but the way the law stands, it is operational, and I can truly accept that. And let's sit back and see how we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I note that other councils are also lining up for a change to cashless, and looking at our own operation, 91% of our ratepayers pay by card. So the number is ever diminishing. It was resource hungry in terms of our staff. Even for security to come and pick up the money, it was expensive. So I support the operational decision to streamline our business. Banks are doing it. We all bank. We're copping it from the bank. So I think council's got an entitlement to save ratepayers money, and I support the operational decision. Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, so through the chair, I've actually had this conversation on a few occasions recently, and it all seems to be quite positive once you explain the fact to people that they actually can still pay with cash
At the post office.
Yep. The angst that seems to be there about the word cashless seems to go away when you explain it. So I think a little bit of education, and people need to know that they actually can still pay with real money at the post office, that it's the same process that a lot of big companies are going to. So yeah, it's quite positive.
And just on that point, Councillor Millwood, a lot of the older generation don't trust technology. They hear about hacking and they still carry checkbooks. Well, council won't be accepting cheques either. They've got to go to the post office as well. So I've had a few chats with the older generation around their checkbook, and yeah, you can pay your rates, but not at the council front desk. It's going to be at the post office going forward after tomorrow, I believe. Yep.
Correct. Through the chair, just worth pointing out, at our waste transfer stations will continue to accept cash. We understand that at times when you're at those facilities, that will be continued.
Okay, no further business arising. We'll move on to item 3, community and culture. Item 3.1, page 357, the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project, and the reference group terms of reference, and Ms. Saffron will present this report. Morning.
Morning. Good morning, everyone. Am I working? Yes. So I'm presenting this morning the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project, and I'm assuming everyone's read the report. Pretty much the Town Mission Beach Centre Revitalisation Project Control Group are preparing for the project commencement and to progress the Council's goal of working collaboratively to build a community informed and engaged in its future. The Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project Control Group has determined the need for a community stakeholder reference group. The reference group will form part of the overall team and will be the vehicle through which the project control group will ensure that stakeholders and community are informed and consulted on the design and progress of the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Project. The community and stakeholder reference group will work with the project control group throughout the detailed design and construction phase, and to ensure that the group has an understanding of their roles and responsibilities and limitations, a draft terms of reference has been developed. So the basic idea of the terms of reference is that it will guide the group in their roles, responsibilities and limitations, and the terms of reference outlines basically the purpose of the group, the council's commitment to the group, membership and their responsibility, the fact that they work to council's code of conduct like any other group that is involved with council, gaining membership, so how they go about gaining membership, their roles and the committee, and the delegation authority, the declaration of conflict of any interest of any groups, and how amendments and modifications and variations of the group are undertaken. So through this, it also, so when they're, so their membership will consist of basically a member of the RNTBC, which down in Mission Beach is the Juru people, a Department of Transport, Main Roads and Ergon Energy, and Mission Beach Arts, C4, and then 2 community members, 2 property owners, 2 business owners, and obviously 2 councillors. So the community members, the property owners and the business owners will be required to submit an expression of interest, while those other groups who are imperative to the project will be invited to attend, so they will be invited to have representation. Council has the 2 councillors that are involved will be Councillor Pervin and Councillor Chewy, and they will be the chair and deputy chairperson of the group. The facilitator will be our project manager, and council will provide a secretariat service. So pretty much that's the outline of the terms of reference, and if everybody's quite happy with that.
Thank you, Ms Saffron. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Ms Saffron. Not a question. I just think this is a great way to move this whole project forward. I've been down at Mission Beach and there have been rumblings of confusion and uncertainty. What's going to happen? When's it going to happen? How will my business be affected? I've heard this. People are saying that. So this is a great way to start that communication process. So I encourage business people, community people who want to become involved to apply to become on this team. It's very important that we do, everybody has a voice and we do listen to what they're saying and work together to make this great project happen. So well done. Thank you.
Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, through the chair. So, Ms Saffron, could you just explain to those that are interested in doing an expression of interest exactly where they can find?
Okay, in due course, what will happen is we will, our comms team will actually advertise and put it out there, and there will be opportunity by going to the website. So it's not up there yet, but in time it will occur. So once we're ready to get it up there, and obviously once budgets and the likes are over, and we're dealing with this possibly in the next week.
Thank you.
I think too, in response to Councillor Chewy, it's an ongoing commitment of council to ensure that we're meeting our strategic objectives and that we're doing the engagement, consultation, and making sure that our decisions are transparent. So it's just
Thank you, Ms Saffron. Any further questions for the officer? Councillor Pervin.
Yeah, Mrs Saffron, morning. Just back on that, touch base on Councillor Millwood there. So will councillors ourselves be, once the expression of interest are put in, will councillors ourselves elect who will be on that panel? Or will it be done by the
that
officers?
will be up to the project control group to determine how that panel, how they actually assess those expressions of interest. So there is a group that sits above the project manager, which is the project control group. So they haven't yet put in place that assessment criteria. So once that's in place, they will be the assessment.
And who will that consist of?
Sorry?
The project control group, who will that consist of? Will it be
That
myself,
consists of,
Councillor Chewy and the CEO? Or
I'll defer to the CEO here, he's on that group.
Through the chair, the project control group is council officers, so that's got myself and some other key officers that make up that group, including the project manager. So for clarity, there are a number of memberships to this stakeholder reference group which are actually defined. So obviously the traditional owners, DTMR, also Ergon Energy, we've got in the terms of reference C4 and also Mission Beach Arts. So those would be not an expression of interest but a request to provide someone to be a member. The expression of interest would purely be for 2 business owners within that region, 2 community members and 2 property owners from the Mission Beach area. So that would be assessed by the project control group based on those submissions, but that group would be led by yourself and Councillor Chewy to support.
Okay, thanks, Mr CEO.
Through the chair, just for clarity, I guess the bulldozers aren't about to rip through Mission Beach at the moment. We're engaging this group. We've got a community engagement plan that's been endorsed, so we're working through that concept design, so taking the master plan through to concept at the moment, and important that we get this group on board to help through our consultation through that process. So yeah, we have time. There will be, you'll see a significant uplift in the communication regarding this project now that we have it budgeted in the upcoming financial year.
Councillor Chewy.
Thank you. And just clarification as far as property owners, that could refer to people who have a house in the vicinity and a business property in the vicinity?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for the officer? Somebody moved the recommendation that council endorses the Mission Beach Town Centre Revitalisation Draft Community and Stakeholder Terms of Reference. Moved by
So
Councillor.
moved.
Moved by Councillor Baines, seconded by Councillor Tui. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms Saffron. We now move on to item 4, Economic Activation and Tourism. Item 4.1, page 363, Economic Development Advisory Committee, and Ms Clark will present this report.
Good morning. So this morning, councillors, I bring to you the Economic Development Advisory Committee report. So taking the report as read, I'll provide an overview. So Cassowary Coast Regional Council has identified the need to establish a Regional Economic Development Advisory Committee to provide guidance and input to council to shape the region's economy for the future. The committee shall be referred to as the Economic Development Advisory Committee, or EDAC for short. The Cassowary Coast Regional Council Corporate Plan clearly articulates an economic vision for the Cassowary Coast region. To ensure the region is in the best position to take advantage of economic growth and development that capitalises on the region's unique value proposition, it is integral that a collaborative approach is undertaken. Council recognises the importance of a collaborative economic environment and is committed to an effective partnership with the region's industry bodies, local chambers of commerce, and energetic economic voices. To support this, Council aims to provide a platform that facilitates and encourages a unified approach to economic development and serves to harness the collective strengths of the region's leaders. The report does outline some risk implications. So the Economic Development Advisory Committee does pose confidentiality risks, and this is being considered and controlled within the terms of reference attached. The membership of the committee also poses a risk to council and regional image, and it is imperative that the membership structure and recruitment criteria is adhered to as detailed in the terms of reference. There are financial and resource implications to this report, so should council endorse the terms of reference and approve the establishment of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, it is important to note that the resource implications include the executive support team, hosting of meetings and creation of reports that are brought through to council. These resource implications can be absorbed by council's current organisational structure. The financial implications, as noted in the terms of reference, is that the Economic Development Advisory Committee do have the ability to bring forward recommendations through to council. These recommendations may suggest the allocation of funds or resources to achieve the desired economic outcomes for the region. So the recommendations brought forward to you today are that council moves to establish an Economic Development Advisory Committee, that they endorse the Economic Development Advisory Committee terms of reference attached, appoint the Economic Development and Tourism Portfolio Holder as the Chair of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and approve the Executive Support Team as outlined in the terms of reference to begin the membership recruitment.
Thank you, Ms Clark. Any questions? Councillor McLeod.
Not really a question, there's two things. The establishment of an Economic Development Advisory Committee and endorsement of the terms of reference is another demonstration of Council's commitment to the small business friendly charter that we signed in Townsville. It reinforces Council's pledge to communicate and engage with businesses across the region. And Mr Mayor, through you, I would like to amend the terms of reference. So as the selection committee consists of the Mayor, Director of Delivery Services, Manager of Community Relations and Service, and Portfolio Holder, Economic Development and Tourism, myself. And the reason for this amendment would be to provide a balance between officers and councillors and provides for an escalation point through the CEO for any disputes.
Okay, there's been an amendment moved. We have a seconder? Yep. Seconded by Councillor Millwood. Can we have some debate? Would you like to speak to it, Councillor McLeod, given you're the mover, or Councillor Millwood, the seconder? Speak to the amendment. Okay, Councillor Millwood.
Through the chair, yeah, I'll speak to the amendment. I think it's a great idea because, as Councillor McLeod just stated, that we need to have an escalation point if the need comes about that something may need to be arised, and generally to put yourself in that position, it's probably not the best idea. So yeah, fully support it.
Okay, any further discussion, Councillor Pervin?
Yeah, just got a question. I just on the financial implications. What could these implications be in this circumstance?
Yeah. I'm happy to just re-clarify, as I said, so the group itself, they have the ability to bring forward recommendations through to council. So it could be an idea that they have for a placemaking initiative that might have financial implications attached to it, and that would be brought forward to council. Council then has the ability to either approve that recommendation or to not. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Millwood?
Sorry, not a question, just wanted to make a comment to Ms Clark that it's great to see the inclusion of the chambers in the actual membership structure, so that's good moving forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Baines, before we put this to a vote, have you followed the debate and you're on song with us?
I have followed the debate, Mr Mayor. I agree with the points that have been raised and I am happy with the amendment as it stands.
Okay, any further discussion or debate on the amendment? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
That's unanimous. The amendment now becomes a substantive motion and I will again put that to the vote. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms Clark. We now move on to item 5, Governance, Environment and Finance. Item 5.1, page 372, the Finance Report, and Mr Graffin will present this report.
Thank you, Mayor. Apologies, we have a few apologies today. I think the influx of tourists is a great thing for the region, but unfortunately it has brought with it some unwanted side effects. The purpose of the report today is to promote sound financial management and accountability, and we are presenting today the Finance Report as at 31 May 2022. Some of the highlights in the report include an overall operating surplus of $5.7 million, which is $887,000 over budget compared to the budget of $4.8 million. Operational revenue is $93.5 million, which is $1.7 million over budget compared to year-to-date of $91.8 million. Operational expenditure of $87.8 million, which is $812K over budget compared to year-to-date budget of $87 million. At the end of month, cash balance is $55.2 million, and capital expenditure for the month was $2.4 million, with a total including commitments of $38.1 million, which represents 76% of the total budget. Some other highlights in there: fees and charges are over budget by $591,000. That's primarily due to an increase in searches, certificates and development applications and approvals. Our interest is under budget by $77K, predominantly relating to interest on outstanding rates. We have seen our operating grants over budget by $1.89 million due to receipt of the DRFA Emergent Works funding. Also, that figure now includes the prepayment of the financial assistance grants funding of $1.4 million. Happy to take any questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr Graffin. Any questions or comments for the officer? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor McLeod. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 5.2, page 387, Delegations Council to the CEO. And Ms Kerr will present this report.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Ms Kerr.
Good morning. Today we have in front of you the annual delegations review of Council to Chief Executive Officer. This is required under the Local Government Act, Section 257, where Council is required to undertake an annual review. The governance team has conducted the review of delegations, and for the purpose of this report includes delegations by Council to the CEO only and not the sub-delegations of the Chief Executive Officer to employees or contractors. Section 260 of the Act requires Council to maintain a delegations register, and this can be found on Council's website. There are several matters which cannot be delegated, including sections under the Local Government Act, Planning Act, Environmental Protection Act, and Waste Reduction and Recycling Act. A full copy of these matters can be requested from Governance. It is recommended that all powers referred to in the document titled Register of Delegations Council to CEO are hereby delegated by the Council to the Chief Executive Officer pursuant to Section 257 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you, Ms Kerr. Any questions for the officer? Somebody move the recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Councillor Barnes?
Aye.
That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
you.
Kerr. We move on to item 5.3, page 538, Regional Queensland Council of Mayors membership, and the CEO will present this report.
Thank you. This report talks to the Regional Queensland Council of Mayors, which was established to work to secure the future for all regional Queensland communities. So they seek to influence government policy and promote growth in regional Queensland through investment in infrastructure and social development. So the membership's drawn from mayors across the 43 regional Queensland councils, with CEOs taking an involved role. Membership opportunities include the ability to raise issues through the executive, work collaboratively to better represent common regional issues, and participate in membership forums with key state and federal government representatives. So there is a current executive there. This new group is effectively lobbying on behalf of the regional areas that they represent. So this is similar to the South East Queensland Council of Mayors or the Western Queensland Alliance of Councils. And their purpose is to give councils in the balance of Queensland a similar voice to the members of those other two organisations. So it is considered that being part of the Council of Mayors would strengthen council's voice in key advocacy areas, including city deals, energy, water, tourism, roads, ports and communication. The membership runs annually. There's a membership fee of $5,486, which has been included in the is included in the 22-23 budget. So the recommendation is that the Cassowary Coast Regional Council become a member of the Regional Queensland Council of Mayors and advise the CEO to finalise membership accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any questions, Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support this, as I think having 43 regional councils is such a great thing with the upcoming Olympics in due time, and it gives regional councils a real voice against the southeast corner, where all the power seems to be currently. So I support it fully.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Chewy.
Yeah, I was going to say similar words through you, Mr. Mayor, as Councillor Barnes. We need to have a voice. There's always people complaining about things happening in the southeast. As we've seen in the census, things are happening at Cassowary Coast as well. So we need to have a voice that can be heard throughout all of Queensland. So I support this completely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Just one other supporting statement. CEO and I were invited to a forum last week where the current membership of this group brought on a guest speaker who was Fiona Nash, a former federal MP and current National Education Ambassador. So a big hitter, and she was the very first guest speaker for the group. So they're the sort of people they can bring into the room to change policy. And as Councillor Barnes mentioned, there is a fear that all the money is going to get sucked to Brisbane for the 2032 Olympics, and the Regional Council of Mayors want to fight for our fair share. That's their premise, that's their charter. They made that very clear from the day they started, and for the small amount of $5,000, we're going to be sitting in the room with Greg Williamson, he's the Chair, Mayor of Mackay, Jenny Hill, Deputy Chair, Mayor of Townsville, and then all the northern mayors are in there except for Cassowary Coast, Mareeba and the Tableland. And I mean Bob Manning, Frank Beveridge, Michael Kerr and Peter Scott, they're already signed up. Councillor Pervin.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So just a question on this. So we'll basically be members of this and FNQ Rock, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
For the short term, and we'll take advice from our CEO about the value for the spend, and we'll see how we go over the next 12 months.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. We're not locking any future council into any position. This is just something we want to trial because we think there's value in it for $5,000.
Yep.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Chewy moved, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Carried.
Aye.
Unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 6, asset sustainability. Item 6.1, page 542, the CCRC capital report, and Mr. Slattery will present. Morning.
Morning all. Okay, before you we have the capital report for May 22. I'll take the report as read, though I'll provide a brief summary. Council has adopted its capital works program for the 21-22 financial year. The status of individual projects is reported on monthly. By way of background, Council is advancing the delivery of the capital works projects commenced in prior years, as well as the delivery of new projects in 21 and 22. Council's capital works program for 21-22 contains 303 projects with a total budget of $49.8 million. As of the 10th of June 22, the Council has expended $38.9 million, including commitments of the program capital works budget, which equates to approximately 78% of the deliverable program. The attachment to this report contains the status updates for individual projects. Commencement and completion dates have been included. However, forecasted dates are subject to change dependent on factors such as weather conditions, supply availability, and other unforeseen circumstances. Of particular note, projects completed since the last report include Hort Street Tully, the pedestrian safety barriers, the Barbed Wire Creek Bridge renewal, Panassi Road culvert renewals, Dunk Island walking track renewal, and Marillion Harbour water main renewal. I'd now like to recommend that Council receive the report and acknowledge the status of capital works projects managed by it.
Thank you, Mr. Slattery. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Millwood?
Yes, through the chair. So I noticed in the TIDS funding that there was some allocation to Spenos Road. Does that pertain to the culverts that were done on the eastern side?
Eastern side, through the chair. Last year, yes, they were installed on the eastern side of Spanos Road, and I believe, despite having some significant rain events since, that they're performing quite well. We haven't had flooding on that section of road since the install.
Okay, very good, very good. I also noticed in there the Works for Queensland Tully Caravan Park. Just want to make a really good comment on Tully Caravan Park. Steve and Leanne, the guys down there looking after it, are doing a fabulous job. If you haven't been down there, you should go. Do yourself a favour and go down there and have a look at it. They have got the grounds looking immaculate.
Great.
There probably is a little bit more work council could do in that space, but given that I went uptown yesterday afternoon and several businesses said to me, the caravan park's full. It looks fantastic. And I said, well, thanks. And they said, well, we need to keep them here because they're all spending money in town. So I just wanted you all to know that the community is right behind the great job that's been done there. And I think we should make sure we keep it in our line of sight to keep it to a good standard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Slattery, go to that chart that we have here, funding source DRFA. If you wind down, you'll see a lot of these have to be done by today. Is there any in question that won't be done by today? Like I see Kelly Beach Road, I see South Mission Beach Path, I see, if you scroll down, you haven't got it. You see a few there?
I'm aware of a few, Councillor Barnes. Cowley Beach, we have an extension on that one till the end of July. It's my understanding that will be complete by that date. The others I can take offline, Councillor, and report back.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Any further questions? Just a clarification, Mr. Slattery, the Marillion Harbour water main upgrade, who paid for that? Ports Northall Council?
Us. Not sure.
To take that one on notice,
Okay,
Mayor, and
yeah.
come back to you, that I'm not aware of it being a project that we have.
Yeah, okay. Any further questions for the officer? Somebody move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour, Mr. Councillor Baines?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Slattery. We move on to item 6.2, page 557, Innisfail Mundu Aerodrome, and Mr. Dyer. No, Mr. McBride will present. Over to you, Mr. McBride.
Morning all. Yeah, the report author today is an apology, so I'll do my best to reach a recommendation and take any questions if need be. The Innisfail Aerodrome is Council's largest and most used airport within the Cassowary Coast region. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with an update and to adopt future direction on various matters impacting the airport and its future operations. I guess at a high level, this report is seeking to increase the capacity of the aerodrome and the efficiency and reduce some operational costs. Leading up to this report, Council has consulted extensively with all the existing users at Mundu and FNQ Rock throughout the process. The report recommends that one, support the decommissioning of the non-directional beacon, NDB, at Mundu Aerodrome, inform Air Services of Council's decision and request that Air Services decommission the NDB in the most cost-effective manner, preferably as part of the future national review. Participate in FNQ Rock Regional Aerodrome Operational Business Plan if it is considered cost-effective to do so. Advertise the 2 vacant leases for sites of A, G and AH situated outside of the NDB restriction zone for tender. Advertise for tender the 3 vacant lease sites, AI, AJ and AK, following the decommissioning of the NDB. And lastly, await the advice received from FNQ Rock's Regional Aerodrome Operational Business Plan to inform further recommendations to commission a straight-in approach for runway 14 and other capital upgrade works with the aerodrome.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Any questions or comments, Councillor Millwood?
I'll blow the mic apart through the chair. So can you just please confirm, Mr. McBride, that by decommissioning the NDB, that the general operations at this airport will remain the same?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Millwood. Any further questions or comments? I think the most significant aspect of the report is that this is going to open up 5 vacant sites and allow us to improve on our business footprint at an airport that's losing money. So by the removal of that equipment, 5 sites will come up for lease, and that's going to add to our financial base and broaden the precinct out there in terms of the commercial users. So I think it's a great outcome. Would somebody like to move the recommendation, please? Councillor Chewy moves, seconded by Councillor McLeod. Councillor, all in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
That's unanimous, thank you. We move on to item 6.3, page 562, support for the Innisfail District and Tully District Show Society, and Mr. McBride will present.
Yes, this refers to some in-kind support in getting Council to endorse that for the upcoming shows at the Tully and Innisfail District shows. The Tully and Innisfail District Show Societies have provided a list of support requests. This list is attached to the report and has been cross-referenced with CCRC staff to inform a recommendation for assistance that is consistent with what has been historically provided. The report refers to, there's 2 attached tables there which outlines the number of tasks which have recommendations against it. I'll just highlight that as part of the Tully show, there is just a variation on that attachment, and that refers to the cost of bins to the Tully show. Council had a figure in there of $9,250. That actually should read $3,700, so there's a $5,550 difference there. So we'll just acknowledge that as part of the report. The recommendation is that Council endorses the in-kind and direct support provided to the Tully and District Show Society to the value of $23,140, and the Innisfail and District Show Society to the value of $16,688.
Thank you, Mr. McBride. Councillor Chewy.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So everybody knows how much I love the shows. I won't go on about that again. Just clarifying that this is contributions that we have always made to the show societies. We are now putting a dollar value on it. Is that correct?
That's essentially
correct. So there's no
correct,
more, no less than we've done previously?
There may be slight variations compared to last year. Each year, councils provide support, but that level varies depending on the needs of the year.
But we can just let people know that this is our support that we are giving to these 2 major events in our town. Thank you.
Any further Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, through the chair. I'd just like to acknowledge the importance of this report. This is a great display of the generosity given to the shows by our council and its staff. I think that it's fantastic that council is showing the actual monetary value of the support that is given, and this often goes unnoticed. I think that this is council reinvesting in our community. So I'd like to say that I'm proud that council's gone and put the monetary value there. Thank you.
Well said, Councillor Millwood. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, as great a project as the grandstand is, and it makes the Tully show even bigger and better than it already is, on every bit of machinery we buy, or be it a building we build, we do have teething problems. And I think the only one left now at the grandstand is the lift. Does council have a plan for the upcoming show concerning the lift?
Yeah, through the chair. The lift we've had it serviced recently and it is currently operational as it stands. We acknowledge that there's been ongoing issues, particularly on game days for the Tully football. We've sought to rectify that, but all I can say at this present time is the lift is operational. We'll be working with Caroline and the Show Society down there to provide support over those days to ensure it's operational and accessible for the public.
Any further? Councillor Chewy?
Just further to that, thank you, Councillor Barnes. Yes, we've had issues with the lift. We just would like to remind people that perhaps the majority of the people could use the stairs and the lift be there for people that really need to use it. And without sounding rude and inconsiderate, it is not a free ride at the Tully Show. The lift is not a free ride at the Tully Show. Also, I would just like to give a shout out to all the volunteers from both show societies. It's a huge job that goes into organising a show, and I know that they would love to have more people on board. So don't be shy, go and knock on your show society doors. They're probably there in the pavilions right now at the show offices. So on behalf of council, I would like to congratulate and thank the volunteers that make the show societies happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Councillor Millwood.
Further to Councillor Chewy's comments, I'd also like to recognise the great efforts put in by the the volunteers, and the Show Society in our communities, because without them these shows don't happen, and they're a pretty big event in our area. So great job.
Thanks, Councillor Millwood. I'd also like to supplement the compliments by saying that the work camp also contribute significantly to the upkeep of both showgrounds, and that goes unnoticed as well. I just wonder whether their man hours are included in these in-kind figures, or is that additional to that?
I think that's separate.
So that there doesn't tell the full picture of what we do as a community. We welcome the work camp into our community. They do a great job cleaning headstones, footpaths, and they look after a lot of our sporting fields, including the two showgrounds. And the man hours that they put in, we don't record it, but it should be recorded in terms of what we deliver to these two show societies. Somebody move the recommendation, please. Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Barnes. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
That's unanimous, thank you. We move on to item 6.4, page 567, Innisfail District Tennis Club lease. Mr McBride will present.
Thank you. This report refers to the lease disposal to the Innisfail District Tennis Association. As background, the Innisfail District Tennis Association are a self-funded, not-for-profit tennis club established for over 30 years. It has a very proactive executive and a current membership of over 140 members. The courts and facilities are maintained by the club at its own cost. It also makes courts available for hire by the general community for a small hire fee through the year via an online booking system. The tennis courts are used extensively throughout the year, 5 days a week, with multiple events and tournaments, including the Narada Open, which is a Tennis Australia ranked tournament attracting players and their families from outside the region, which in turn provides an economic benefit to the community. The tennis club engage in many revenue-raising activities and has put them in a very strong financial position. Council officers are currently developing a community use of assets policy, and information from Innisfail District Tennis Association has been assessed against its draft policy and framework. And this assessed the club against 4 key criteria, including governance, community and economic benefit, sustainability, and utilisation. The tennis club have provided all relevant information to demonstrate they meet Council's adopted principles for the community use of assets. All improvements on the site will be transferred to the leasee and removed from Council's asset register. The terms of the new lease will confirm this.
Thank you, Mr McBride. Any questions or comments to the officer? Councillor Pervin.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in relation to the Innisfail Tennis Club, I'm a member of the Innisfail Tennis Club, and they're a very active group. They continuously have working bees. The courts are kept clean. They have a lot of members that help out in their kitchen facilities during the tournaments as well. And also they've been working very closely with the local council lately in relation to the drainage upgrade that's about to partake on the bottom tennis courts. And they are very happy with the way staff have been in talks with them, how it's going to affect their upcoming tournaments. So I think, yeah, they're a club that are very successful, and I'm glad to see that we can give them an extension of a lease.
Thanks, Councillor Pervin. Any further comments? Just a further comment and a compliment to our staff. When we engaged the asset rationalisation process, there was a lot of negativity in the community. They thought we had the bulldozers lined up. Part of that asset rationalisation process then broadened out into leases and management agreements. And I think the small group on the ground doing the real work, Peter McBride, Chris Acatino and Justin Fisher, have done an outstanding job. I think every meeting now we're approving a new lease. The good corporates, the flagships in our sporting communities are getting looked after, and because they meet our principles, they match up with our principles. And I just want to compliment the work of the 3 guys on the ground that do all the work. We get the pleasure of passing the reports, but all the groundwork's done by Peter, Justin, and Chris. So I just want to pass that on to the crew.
Through the chair, I'll just add Mark Valenti's a big part of that too.
I'm in trouble. Mark Valenti, yeah.
Yep.
Apologies, Mark. I left the lawyer out. Okay, have we voted on that? All right, no further discussion. Somebody move it. Moved by Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor McLeod. All in favour? Carried. Aye. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr McBride.
Thank you.
We move on to item 6.5, page 570, the leak reduction strategy, and the CEO will present this report.
Thank you. Through the Chair, this leak reduction strategy is around Council being committed to providing water security to the community both now and in the future. So as part of this commitment, it's paramount that Council continues to work towards reducing the real water loss that are apparent within the community. So to achieve this, Council has developed a leak reduction strategy and associated programs of work. So in 2019, Council, the Cassowary Coast Regional Council engaged the services of an external contractor to assist in the development of a leak reduction strategy to provide Council a way forward in reducing the volume of water loss within the community. Over the last 2 years, Council's commenced several of these initiatives, and the percentage of revenue, non-revenue water has, as a whole, decreased. So this is highlighted in the figures presented in the report. However, it's apparent that although non-revenue water has decreased in 3 of the 4 schemes, the Carball scheme has continued to increase. So in February 22, the National Performance Report indicated that the national median for real losses across all water utilities was 69 litres per service connection per day. Even with the recent decrease in percentage of non-revenue water, Cassowary Coast is still reporting high real losses among all utilities at 373 litres per service connection per day, and that was in 2021. So some work to be done still in this space, and this strategy really paves the way for Council to move forward and to continue to find these, or to reduce our both costs and reduction in real water losses. So there's a recommendation there, that's that Council adopt the leak reduction strategy, and note that the ongoing budget requirements required within the strategy, they will be incorporated into a long-term financial plan.
Thank you, Mr Graffin. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm very, very complimentary of the Water Department of recent times, and I'm really confident that the money that we put in yesterday's budget for this department, I think will get great return, as all our pipes are ageing. We've got some 50-year-old pipes, and they've just had their use-by date. I think the general public, if they can take on board these smart meters, and when we send letters, please heed them, as it costs us a lot of money to get water to your household. But in saying that, I think you'll find that we do have some of the cheapest water in Australia. We're very, very lucky there. And yeah, I think that's just about it for now. But I really, just to reiterate, I think we are going to get great return for dollars spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Millwood?
Sorry, through the chair, it might be directed at you, Mr. CEO. There is opportunity for people to take benefit of. Is there an online system where they can tap into to check their water usage?
So through the chair, council has been rolling out smart meters over the last couple of years. As was alluded, there's some additional funding this year in the 22-23 budget to continue to roll out those smart meters, as well as doubling the spend on renewal of infrastructure in that department. So we have got in the operational plan this year an initiative to roll out this technology to the community. So yes, the community would then have the ability through their smartphone to able to monitor water usage, and rather than the letters, actually receive that notification when that leak is detected or overuse is detected. So that will be rolled out through our operational plan this year.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? If not, somebody move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Barnes, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 7, planning services. Item 7.1, page 611, contributions in lieu of provision of on-site parking. And Mr. Jones was going to present. And Ms. Kerr's chasing him up. No, you're right, Mr. Horton.
Morning, Council.
Morning.
How is everyone?
Good, mate. Good.
Item 7.1, contributions in lieu of provisions of on-site car parking policy. This is a policy that we we had to bring back to Council. We agreed in the April meeting as part of that recommendation that we would bring a full Council policy. We did the policy at that time for just Mission Beach to deal with a development application in that area. However, this policy is created and it encompasses Innisfail, Tully, Cardwell and the Greater Mission Beach area, which aligns with, appropriately dealing with car parks that are not part of a development application. It is part of a development application, I should say. However, it is car parks that can't fit on the site as part of that provision. So, Council, this policy will take over the original one in April and encompass the whole area. So it'll still work in a way where a development application comes into Council. We'll consider that application, ensure that it can meet as much car parking on site as it can. Sometimes it can't. Therefore, Council officers and the developer owner will enter into an infrastructure agreement prior to the decision being made for that application to ensure that any off-site parking that can't be catered will be put into an infrastructure agreement, and this infrastructure charge of $12,900 will be charged per car park for that development. I'd see it mainly trying to achieve densification, especially around those centres, with this policy, and contributing to what we've got at the current time, which is in Mission Beach, which has been fully utilised by, certainly market days, and hopefully with the reconstruction of that area over time, and hopefully as well as the Innisfail Master Plan area once we get moving with that component. The policy attached, Council, shows the areas of the planning scheme. It puts in the locations within that on page 5, 6, 7 and up to 9, Council, as well as on page 10 and 11, it outlines the location. So pretty much in that Innisfail local plan map. It talks about the township zone, the Innisfail local plan, that central business area. So we're catering for that central business area, and that's mainly around, you know, the Shire Hall, the frontage, Eder Street, those types of areas. The Township Zone Council, which is a Greater Mission Beach local plan, the tourism precinct, around north to Boyett Road there, coming back through to the Village Green area, down around Castaways and those components. The other components down around Stephen Street and those areas around Woolworths. And then it's in the Tully Township area, central business, which is Butler Street and Bryant and those types around town. And then we've got the Cardwell area, which is the tourism precinct and that business precinct in the main strip there around the main town centre council. So, as I said, applicants will still need to make sure that they meet, you know, the required car parking to a standard. However, this is just that limited type of component. There might be 2 or 3 that they can't deal with, where we enter into that infrastructure agreement and deal with that moving forward, and they pay that contribution towards providing that benefit to those areas by what we've done in Mission Beach to date. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Just a question about the new planning scheme. If this is adopted today, is that a standalone policy, or does it become an appendix of the new planning scheme?
It's just through the chair. It's a standalone policy.
Okay.
Yeah, it sits outside the planning scheme. But through the chair, probably when we do the planning scheme and look at the planning scheme, we might leave our policies out of the scheme, just depending, because if they're referenced in the scheme but they're out of the scheme, you can amend them a lot easily than going through a minor amendment or a major amendment of the planning scheme, which, you know, takes a considerable amount of time. So,
Councillor Millwood.
Yeah, so through the chair, Mr. Horton, so this policy aims to address just new applications and not existing. So somebody that's got an existing building and wants to aim for more car parks, are they able to access this policy as well, or is this just for new applications?
Through the chair, it's new applications because, as mentioned before, we need to enter an infrastructure agreement before a decision's made. We can't make a decision and then do an infrastructure agreements between the council and the developer or the owner of that land to enter into that, to bind it into that development. If we don't do it, then we've got no power. So we have to do that prior. So, if someone's got a business and they want to increase that or intensity, it'll be a development application on top of that. Then we negotiate those components same as what we did with the Mission Beach Tavern.
Any further questions for the officer? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Millwood, seconded by Councillor Purban. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks,
Mr. Horton. We move on to item 8, receipt of petitions. Item 8.1, page 627. Petition requesting the removal of a road safety sign at Bingle Bay. And the CEO will present the report. Oh.
Through the chair. In May 21, Council received a customer request from a Bingle Bay resident concerned about the use of the end of Pioneer Street in Bingle Bay as a lookout. The request raised a road safety concern that motorists may drive through the unmarked end of the street and over the embankment. Council local laws officers investigated the request and confirmed that the assessment there was a safety risk, and in response to that requested a standard obstruction marker be installed at the end of the street. And there's a image of that in the report. So those obstruction markers are used to delineate obstructions within or above the road. Typically users of these markers are to highlight either road closures, either mid-block or at the end of a cul-de-sac. In December 21, Council received a petition with 21 signatures, 5 of which are from residents living on Pioneer Street, requesting that the sign be removed as it impacts on the amenity of the street and disrupts the views of the Coral Sea. As a risk has been identified and treated with a standard road safety sign, simply removing the sign is not an option, as it would leave Council exposed to significant risk. To provide an alternative non-standard treatment of risk would come at additional upfront and ongoing cost, and it would expose Council to additional risk due to the adoption of a non-standard risk management approach. A solution consisting of bollards, reflectors and landscaping is estimated to cost Council around $5,000. A detailed design and risk assessment would be required if we went down that path, and costs may change following this process. So based on the limited operational budget available for roadside maintenance and the fact that the location is an informal lookout with no facilities, the investment of additional funds at this location is not recommended based on the network priority basis. It's also possible that the petitioners would object to the installation of bollards, etc., as the level of visual obstruction required in any form that highlights the end of the street would also impact on the visual amenity. There is a recommendation, Council, there, which is that Council note the petition and advise the petitioners that the current sign will remain in place as it was installed in response to an identified road safety issue.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Tui.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Yes, I've spoken to the people concerned, and since the petition has been lodged, our officers have been up there to tidy up the lookout, and I think that has appeased some of them. It was quite untidy and overgrown, so I'm hoping that if we can keep the site maintained, then they will learn to live with the need for the road safety sign. So hopefully that'll be a good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tui. Any further comments or questions for the officer? I'd just like to note that a proper process was followed. Our staff did a safety audit. We do have a duty of care to all residents, not just 21 that have signed the petition, so I fully support the recommendation. And we'll move it. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Millwood. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Councillor Baines?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, general business. The first item is the Mayor's monthly report on councillor highlights. I want to thank Di Vitale for her great work chasing everybody up to make sure these are in early. And the Mayor's report, which was called for from the community, from our ratepayers, is now on the council website for any of those residents to view. Move on to any other general business items. Councillor Tui.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler, please. Thank you again, Mr. Sadler. Yes, Mr. Sadler, just concerning the Curramine Beach path, I know Councillor Millwood has some comments, might have some comments as well. I've lodged quite a few CRs about the maintenance or the lack thereof. I've had a lady injure herself on it. Weeds are overgrown. The feeling in the community, and I can't comment because I haven't seen all of the issues, is that our staff are not doing a proper job. They're sort of touching and just running in and running out. I can't comment on that myself. So I'm just wondering where we are at with the maintenance. Once again, I know we are weather impacted, but this has been an ongoing issue with different residents, not just one person rehashing the same complaint. So I'll leave that with you. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Tui. I've talked with the maintenance team as recent as this morning. From the customer requests and also your call last week, the team have inspected the location and the deco path, and remembering it is a deco path, there are some minor defects that have been picked up in relation to some scouring that has occurred obviously from the weather. The team has programmed that. In addition, there has been some vegetation issues and obviously grass growing over some of the deco path. So the guys have scheduled that. Obviously, with the weather, that I can't give you a date right now exactly what they'll do, but obviously as soon as it becomes advantageous from a weather perspective, that the team will be there and do some rectification works. And also they will look at it from a capital point of view, from a deco material top up for the future. That will be dependent on what other priorities there are in relation to the capital works for next year.
Certainly, I'd be grateful if I could be notified when the work starts, so I could let community know that to be, maybe stay away from the path while there's work going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tui. While you're here, Mr. Sadler, the Auto Fest has created a lot of hype in the town, and a lot of questions are getting asked around the burnout pad. How close is that to being delivered?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Mayor. I don't have an exact date. Obviously, the weather has delayed us with that. I'll check with the team and come back to you in relation to a fixed date, but the weather has delayed us in relation to getting that done.
Thanks, mate. Look, it's been a great initiative, and just to give you a measurement of the hype, every Friday night, the car enthusiasts, these men that have gone through a midlife crisis and brought up these hot rods, they're meeting every Friday night in Bunnings car park, handing out flyers and talking up the event. So it's going to be huge, and The burnout pad seems to be the main attractor. That's the one they're asking the question about. So I'll tell them that Mr. Sadler's, it's a working front and it'll be ready for the event.
That is our hope, yes.
That's our hope, okay. Any more questions?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, we've got Mr. Sadler here. We've spoke previously on this latest rain event how certain roads have just completely disintegrated, especially since the start of the cane season and the heavy impact of the harvesting. I even showed you some footage yesterday, some video footage. It's quite embarrassing, ladies having to drive up on the railway line to get to work. I know that it's a work in progress and we can't do much while this rain is on, but do you feel confident that looking into the future, we will be fixing a lot of these issues?
So through the chair, thank you, Deputy Mayor. As you know, and we've workshopped our journey in relation to our gravel road improvement plan, and that's nearing completion. And we will have that to you very shortly in relation to council to discuss, and then we'll go out to our customers in relation to what those steps are that we will do. I'm confident with the team that we have that we will deliver an improved product, no question about that. It is challenging times at the moment. The rain that we've had over the last few weeks has really impacted us, and yeah, as we discussed yesterday, the team's been out to a number of those locations to see whether there's something we can do at the moment with the wet weather in relation to that. Sometimes that's difficult depending on the location, and obviously the wet and the moisture that goes into some of those locations, if we put machinery there, actually make it worse. So we've got to find that balance. And as I said to you this morning, that our team are out there looking at those right now and seeing what we can do to try and minimise that impact. But the longer term strategy in relation to our action plan is the key to all this, and how we can deliver an improved product going forward.
Thanks, Mr. Sadler. Councillor Millwood.
So further to that, I hope that they're going to go and have a look at Spenos Road and Cowley Creek Road up my way, because that's being heavily impacted at the moment as well. Yeah, if you go and have a look when it's raining, you'll experience the loveliness of it all. But anyway, I think it's happening all over the region at the present time, and maybe they could look at solutions like adding glass or crumb tyre, or, you know, we do talk about that in the recycling program. So maybe we need to look further abroad to what we're doing at the present time, maybe. Thanks.
Look, in fairness to our staff and the processes that they've implemented, the cane season kicked off last week, and I know for a fact that some of the roads that have been mentioned today have been impacted by heavy cane hauling equipment. So it's not the norm. It's something we've got to adjust for. Sure, the weather hasn't helped, but the cane season is on and things change on rural roads, particularly the unsealed roads. So please bear that in mind. Staff are doing the best they can in the circumstances, and when the cane season kicks off and the weather kicks in, it's a perfect storm. Councillor Pervin.
Just some general business questions, Mr. Mayor. Can I carry on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Sadler.
You thought.
Just a couple of wayfinding signs. We've got issues there with them not lighting up. You gotta give me a rundown of what's going on. Is it up to the council to maintain them, or is it currently the responsibility of the contractor?
I'll just check, is that on?
Sorry, Mr. Sadler. The wayfinding signs. Quite a number of them currently aren't working. There's no lights being displayed on them. Would you be able to give me a rundown? Is it the responsibility of the council to be maintaining them at the moment, or is it still up to the contractor? And any ideas on what's going on with them?
Yeah, well, through the chair, thank you, Councillor Pervin. I'll do my best to answer it. That project sits with my peer director, Mr. Goodman. Look, my understanding is that under defects liability period that they still have, the contractor still has things to fix. I know that our facilities team has been working with electrician and a couple others to rectify some of those things. And I suppose, like anything at the moment, it is hard to get some materials, so they are waiting for some LED lights and things like that to come. So I know that the facilities team is working with a number of different electrical contractors to help us get that resolved. I'm happy to take it on notice and give you an update once I get a chance to go and talk to the facilities team about it.
Thanks, Mr. Sadler. And just one more for you as well, Mr. Sadler. The driver of Vira in Innisfail, we've opened up a new RV park in Innisfail, well, probably 12, 18 months ago. I get a lot of people ringing me up asking me about, can you camp at the driver of Vira? Council maintains it. Why can't council ask them to move along? They're under the understanding it's a 72-hour stop. There's people there parked up with tents. I'm just getting quite a lot. It is a bit of an unsightly sight at times, and also the conditions of the toilets. Is it our responsibility to be asking people to move on?
So through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Pervin. So first of all, it is a Department of Transport and Main Roads facility, and we have entered into an arrangement for some maintenance work. So things like mowing and cleaning the toilets and those type of things we are doing under an arrangement that we do have with Main Roads. As recent as last week, and as mentioned to you via email, that we are talking to the operations side of DTMR and working with them in relation to a solution moving forward. We currently don't have jurisdiction over that space in relation to our local laws and our local law officers to move on, and we are working with the state in relation to how we might manage that. They have had this issue across the state and other locations as well. And so there is a bit of a approach in relation to what the head of power is that the state could do that type of work. So I don't have an update other than from what we talked about last week, and I'll follow that up and take that on notice in relation to working with DTMR moving forward.
No, thanks, Mr. Sadler. Well, you summed it up there, really. It's not the councils. It's not council that can go and ask people to move on. So that was the biggest part of my question answered. So as long as we can look towards a solution on what can and can't happen there, just the residents of the area, just like I said, it's a bit of an unsightly thing. And I know you said it's a problem across the board, but if we can get it heads of power and try and get something going, be a good starting point. Thank you.
Councillor Pervin, just a bit of background on that. About 3 years ago, the caravan park managers complained about the camping there. It is a road safety stop oversight space, so it's controlled by the state government for road safety. People tired when they're driving. We did act and put signage up to try and discourage camping. The local member, Curtis Pitt, Speaker of the House, got in touch and said to council, that's illegal, you've got to pull them down. So we've gone to the measure of putting up signage to discourage those people, and we got into strife with the state government over it because it is their site. It's for road safety. It's a tough one. Councillor Millwood.
So through the chair, does Queensland Police have any jurisdiction over this, like for people that overstay their 72 hours? Does it become their matter?
So through the chair, Councillor Millwood, that's a really good question, and that's part of the solution moving forward with DTMR, and they'll work with QPS and a few other agencies on how we do that, and we've made a commitment that we would partner with them. You know, obviously that's our community and our space, and what we might be able to assist with as well. But from a head of power point of view, we don't have jurisdiction to do that.
Any further general business matters? Councillor Baines, have you got any?
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Mayor, and I have been sitting here very patiently today. It's been a great meeting. Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed the meeting today. Look, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to make a comment and to pass on my thanks to a recent event I attended in Cairns that was organised by the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority. They had the Federal Minister, Minister Plibersek, and they had the Reef Special Envoy, Senator Nita Green, attend upon stakeholders, and we did a trip out to the reef and had a look around. And Mr. Mayor, I would just like, if you deem appropriate, that we minute thanks to Minister Plibersek and to Senator Green on their very, very early engagement and involvement in the great asset of the Great Barrier Reef that sits out there. They were very open and very welcoming to have local government in the room, and I must say I was encouraged by their enthusiasm towards the efforts of Cassowary Coast Regional Council in general, but Reef Guardian Councils as a whole, and the great works that we do. So, Mr. Mayor, if you deem that it is appropriate that possibly you could pen a letter of thanks to the Minister and the Senator on the Council's behalf, and I would like that to be noted in the minutes about their efforts and their recognition of local government.
Yep, that's all noted and acknowledged, mate. We'll definitely do that. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. First question to the CEO. The Cardwell Pool current leasee has moved on. What is the council's plans looking into the future for Cardwell Pool?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Look, both Innisfail Tully and Cardwell Pools are all now closed at the moment, so they'll be reopening on the 1st of September. So Mission Beach is still open and will remain open through the winter period. But the Innisfail Tully and Mission Beach pool managers have all extended their service contracts until 30 June 2024. But as you've highlighted, the manager of the Cardwell Pool has elected not to renew their contract. So just want to make note, I guess the incumbent managers there have managed the facility for 9 years, and through that time have contributed far more to the community than just managing that facility. So pass on thanks for their contribution to the Cardwell community. Council is currently finalising some works that have been highlighted from the safety audit conducted in April down there, and it's the intention that we'll do a quick review of operations that will result in one of two things. One of those could be that Council will go out and look at tendering the management of that facility, obviously conscious of time frames and having that facility reopening on 1 September. That will be a focus over the next couple of weeks.
Furthermore, last Tuesday there was a great opening of the Cardwell pump track funded by the government and driven by the council and the local community. I'd like to thank the mayor and fellow councillors for attending that, and what a great function that was. Anyone who has not been, it'll be a great road trip with the children. Also, I've recently visited Dunk Island and inspected the work that the council's been doing there. And I, luckily enough, had a carpenter with me, and he was over the moon about the work, the high standard of work that our staff have done there. So congratulations to our staff there, and I hope all involved are very happy. And lastly, where are we with the sewage and the dredging?
Look, we're on track with the design of the STP. Council is currently working and met last week with the Director General of DES and discussing the replacement of the environmental authorities there to allow the management of that facility and new facility to continue. The land acquisition has been implemented and was gazetted a couple of weeks back for the road, so that normalisation process is progressing. So council staff at the moment are currently doing inspections. There'll be some make good works undertaken in that area prior to some of the capital works to renew some of that infrastructure. Obviously lighting is one of those. I think there's 56 lights in that area, and there's a considerable amount of work on some of that lighting, and that will be funded through the state government's funding to bring that normalisation to reality. As far as the dredging, works have been progressed to draft tender documentation for that. At the moment, Council is working with the liquidator to get dredging permits and approvals for use of the dredge spoil ponds in that region. So there is a delay. That process is not progressing as quickly as Council would like, and we understand the frustration from the community that the funding for that project is committed. Council have executed funding agreements for that. We are really just waiting now for that permit from the liquidator.
All good. Any further general business? Councillor Chewy.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, just in support of Councillor Barnes, yes, congratulations to the Cardwell community for all the work that they contributed. I know there were many people, stakeholders involved, but it was a great day. The kids there just were having a fantastic time, and I received a text from Christine at 3:30 in the afternoon. It was still full on and going mad. So congratulations to all those that made that event and that the pump track happen, and look forward to the same thing happening hopefully at Warina as well. We'll have pump track at either end of the Cassowary coast. It'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chewy. Any further general business? I'd just like to pay a compliment to Councillor Baines. He didn't mention it in his report, but when he was invited to a reef trip with the Federal Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, he got on to me about getting correspondence to hand directly to the Minister. I want to thank the CEO for the quick uptake. He prepared correspondence, and the Federal Minister was handed the letter requesting further funding for the Port Ingerbrook sewerage. So we had a great outcome because Councillor Baines got invited to that reef trip, and it was a great opportunity to make touch with the Federal Minister. So that letter was handed directly to her support staff. So thank you for that, Councillor Baines.
My pleasure, Mr. Mayor. Anything to help.
I know you copped Tanya's flipper in the face when you're scuba diving, so you wore some scars for council, and we thank you for that.
I'll always take one for the team, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that's why I mentioned it. Good on you. Okay, no more general business? Okay, thank you. We're now going to close the meeting to the public, and the reasons are to discuss item 10, confidential report, item 10.1, page 629, sole supplier and suppliers of services of a specialised or confidential nature. Would somebody move that we close the meeting to the public? Moved by Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor Millwood, Councillor Chewy. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. All right, we'll have a 15-minute break. Okay, councillors and staff, we now reopen the meeting to the public. Would somebody move effectively? Councillor Pervin, seconded by Councillor McLeod. All in favour? That's unanimous. Okay, I'll now hand over to Mr Littlemore to present item 10.1 on page 629, sole supplier and suppliers of services of a specialised or confidential nature.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, Mr Mayor and councillors, the local government regulation requires that council consider when there is a sole supplier, whether that they are satisfied that there is a sole supplier, and the reason for this is because the local government regulations require councils to seek a certain number of tenders or quotations when there are contracts over a certain value that are intended to be let, and clearly if there is only a sole supplier, there needs to be an exemption to that regulation, which is the purpose of today's report. If councillors are satisfied that the list as attached are sole suppliers, I'd ask that they move and vote that way.
Thank you, Mr Littlemore. Any questions? Councillor Barnes?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr Littlemore. Just being the new manager of your department, do you have appetite to reach out and maybe contact small and new businesses to put on your list? And the second question is, how easy will it be for new businesses and small businesses to get on that list?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barnes. Through you, Mr Mayor.
Yep.
There are only a limited number of businesses, obviously, that are sole suppliers, and perhaps more generally, your question is about suppliers in general. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Having worked in small local governments for quite a part of my career, supporting local businesses has always been on the lips of councillors wherever I've worked. And it can be difficult for suppliers to negotiate the minefield that are the contracts and things that we produce. An example I'll give you is one that we're about to let very shortly, or to put out to tender or request for quotations, is a stationery contract. And although Cassowary Coast Council is now quite a large council, it comprises a number of smaller townships, and there are potential suppliers in those townships that we may not be aware of. But it's my intention with that contract and with other contracts as they come up to make sure that we do reach out and that we do our best to make sure we have local content.
Thank you for that. Any further questions for the officer? I just got one, Mr Littlemore, on page 629, risk implication. I just want an explanation of who they appeal to. It says, a supplier who is not mentioned on the list may mount an argument that they are in a position to supply the nominated goods or services. Would that be a complaint to the CEO in this matter?
Thank you for the question, Mr Mayor. Not necessarily. If they were to reach out to the officers directly, we would take that up and investigate whether there is potential that there are other suppliers, and certainly then we would make staff aware that there are options to seek quotes from firms that do have the capacity to deliver the service we're looking for.
Yeah, this did arise a few years ago with a local supplier of chemicals. Now, he thought he was in a position to supply the chemicals for our water treatment plants, our swimming pools, etc. But once the officer examined the complaint, we were actually buying on a state level. We were buying into like an F&Q rock contract to get our chemicals at a lot cheaper rate because we didn't stand independent and deal one-on-one. So sometimes when the question's asked, it sounds like it's a fair question, but the answer was it's a lot dearer to buy one-on-one, but if you buy it in a group, bit like F&Q rock with sealing of roads, we get the contract a lot cheaper.
Mr Mayor, thank you for that question and comment. In the particular instance there, because there's a contract in place with F&Q rock, that's another exemption to the requirement for council to go out and seek quotes. And usually, the whole point of those contracts is to be able to buy in bulk. So, you know, the amount of chemicals that go into swimming pools and water treatment is huge. And while that might be a great contract for a local supplier to win, when you amalgamate, and I think there's 13 councils in our ROC, that's a huge buying power, which unfortunately, you know, for those big contracts, is very difficult for local suppliers to be able to get involved.
Thanks for that explanation. Any further questions for Mr Littlemore? If not, would somebody move the recommendation, please? Moved by Councillor Chewy, seconded by Councillor Millwood. All in favour? Councillor Baines?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Littlemore.
Thank you, councillors.
That effectively brings our meeting to a close. What's the correct time? Somebody got a watch on? At 11:12. Thanks, everybody.